Hello and welcome back to the channel. I have another video for you today. Today we're going to talk about learning how to spot birds better. The most frequent comment I get is, how do I see all these birds? How do I find these birds? People go out and look, they don't see any birds. So I have developed some tips here. These I have completely just developed on my own through time and experience. They always have worked for me. So I decided to share this and hopefully help other people who want to spot birds for whatever purposes. So let's get down to it. Step number one is training your ears to locate a bird based on hearing it, narrowing down the location based on the sound. You can do this anytime, anywhere. It's not bird specific. If you hear a sound and you're trying to figure out where it's coming from and you're training your ear, this is a really good thing, really, to train your ear to do, and it will help you find birds. So very often, before I was photographing birds, I would be out on a walk or just in my yard and I would hear a bird singing, and I've always appreciated the beautiful sound of a bird singing, and I would really make the effort to figure out where they were, where that sound was coming from. And over time, I got better and better at it. Sometimes they are buried in a bush or in a tree that's really thick, and you can't actually see them, but you can narrow it down to that bush or that tree. And that's just as good. You're still training your ear. Tip number two is to train your eyes to detect motion. This is really good, honestly. If you're safety minded at all, you're looking for safety awareness, this is a really good skill to develop and to train your eye to catch even the slightest motion around you. And I do this like all the time now. I really learned it in spotting birds, but now I can be anywhere, anytime, and I'm like, something just moved. I almost always figure out what it is. I take the time, I make the effort, because it's really good for training your eyes. But that will help you to spot birds when you see even the littlest bit of motion and movement. Number three goes a little bit further, and it's training your eyes to detect the reflection of light. For example, very often I'm looking at a tree and it can be really far off or just really high up, and I see a difference in where the light is reflecting off of leaves and something else. And that's when I pull out my camera and zoom in my lens, and I usually find a bird. Sometimes it's something else. Sometimes it's like one leaf is like flipped upside down, and the underside of a leaf has a very different texture than the upper side in most cases, and so that different texture is going to reflect light differently. But feathers are going to reflect light differently than bushes or trees or those sort of things. So that's another really good one to train your eye for. Tip number four is training your eye to detect colors, changes in colors, differences. So a lot of times birds tend to camouflage. They tend to stay in areas where they blend in. My favorite example is the red-shouldered hawks. Where I live, I've seen it vary kind of regionally, but where I live, their chests are very orangey, reddy, and they like to sit in pine trees. And if you've ever seen, like on a pine tree, when there's a bunch of dead needles sort of hanging, that looks exactly like their chest. Their chest is camouflaging as dead pine needles hanging in a tree. The rest of their feathers tend to camouflage in with the bark of the tree. So it's really cool. But a lot of birds tend to stay in areas where they blend in well, but they don't always. I have seen hooded orioles, which are a really vivid, bright yellow and black, sitting in green trees, pine trees or another tree that's just green. And once you've trained your eye, you see that and you're like, that doesn't blend in. And then you get your camera out, zoom it in, and there you go. Tip number five, training your eye to spot shapes. So this is really good for the birds that stay silent and don't move. Especially birds of prey, this will work for, but any other bird that's just scared and being quiet and still, if you're looking for shapes, it's really, really helpful. I can remember the first time I saw a bird. Early on, I just thought all birds made all this noise and they're moving all over. And I was camping one time in Prescott, Arizona at the Point of Rocks RV campground, if you happen to know where that is. And I was walking around, I had my camera looking for birds. and I saw this big shape in a tree. And I was like, what is that? It's not moving, it's not making noise. And I got my camera ready, and sure enough, it was a bird. And I found out later it was a northern flicker. It was a very large northern flicker, which is a type of woodpecker. But I was so excited. And from then on, I kept looking for shapes in trees. So it works really well for birds of prey, but it does work for other birds. The only warning I'll give you is pine cones. Pine cones will always throw me off. It is a shape in a tree. So looking for motion, pine cones aren't moving. If you see motion, then a shape and a motion, for sure you've probably got a bird or some other animal. Squirrels are there a lot too. But pine cones, I'm kind of just used to pine cones now and I ignore them, but they did throw me many, many times early on. So that's my one warning with that one. Step number 6 is keeping your distance and always scanning as far ahead as possible. You want to spot the bird before you're close enough that they're uncomfortable and they're flying away, and then you lost your chance to get a picture. If you're walking down a street and there's sidewalks and the trees are like right next to the sidewalk, then I'm going to try to stay off of that sidewalk, because that's going to be like too close for comfort for most birds. It depends on the location, but if the trees are right there, you're going to want to try to have some distance between you, and then always be scanning like further ahead also, because then you can spot them and you can get yourself positioned where you need to be before they fly away. Tip number 7 is something I use especially looking for birds of prey, but it could work for other birds too. If I'm walking along trees, I'm scanning the lower branches, then I go to the top of the tree and I scan downwards. They're in most of the time, in my experience, they're either in the lower branches or they're all the way at the top. But there have been occasions where they're in the middle of the tree. The lower branches is where they're going to be more reactive to your presence. So you want to spot that as quickly as possible. So you're scanning ahead and you're scanning low. And then I go straight to the top, because very often they're just at the top. And then I work my way down in case they are in the middle. But they're usually in lower branches or at the top. Tip number 8 is scanning shrubbery. Things like song sparrows, house sparrows, some white-crowned sparrows, they love shrubs. They nest in the shrubs and they're just in them or on top of them. Song sparrows tend to sit on top. They're usually on top of shrubbery or trees. But house sparrows can be on top, or sometimes they're like peeking out of the middle of it. So always be checking shrubbery. That's a great spot. Number 9 is scanning the ground, because birds a lot of times go down to the ground looking for bugs and things like that. So that's a great spot to look for them as well. And don't ignore it while you're looking up at the trees. They will fly away from the ground before you spot them. Number 10, again, is great for birds of prey, but for all birds, scanning the tops of lights and poles, like power poles or any other poles, and lighting as well. They tend to like to sit up on top. And tip number 11 goes along with that, but not always for birds of prey, but scanning the tops of walls and fences. A lot of birds like to sit there. I know California towhees are either on the ground or they're on a wall. I very rarely see them like perched in a tree. Tip number 12 is, learning the behavior of birds, where they like to be, how they move. That way, if you spot a bird ahead of time, you can kind of narrow down. Sometimes I'm out so early, the lighting's not great, and I just have a silhouette I can see of a bird. And I can tell you what kind of bird it is just based on the body shape, the beak shape, that sort of thing. But one day I was walking just recently, there's this really big tall tree here, and it's bare because it's winter time. And I could see from really far off that there was a pretty large bird sitting in it, kind of near the top of it. So I could watch it for quite a while from quite a distance. And I thought at first it might be a crow or a raven. But as I watched the behavior of the bird, I knew it wasn't. Crows and ravens are very fidgety. They're moving around. This bird was very still, very upright, very much like a bird of prey. But the body was so slim that I knew it was not a red-shouldered hawk or a red-tailed hawk with the beauteous body. It was indeed a Cooper's hawk with the accipiter type body. It's much more slender, and then they have the really long tail feathers. But knowing the behavior of a bird can really help you narrow that down, where to look for that bird. Number 13, some people are going to be bothered by this, but if you see upset birds, investigate. Because I have seen so many times where usually a bird of prey, but it could also be a crow or a raven, is near a bird's nest, or they've killed and are eating one of their friends, and they're all very upset. So when you see very upset birds, it's typically sparrows, finches. I've seen kingbirds upset. If you investigate, very often you will lead you to spotting another bird. Tip number 14 is wait. So if you see a bird fly away before you spotted it or before you got there, it flew away, I would say wait. Step back, stay quiet, stay still, and just be patient. Birds are very much creatures of habit, and they like to perch in the same areas over and over. I walk the same path the majority of the time, and I see the same species of birds in the same spots time and time again. So if you just wait, once it feels safe and that the threat is gone, it's going to come right back to its favorite spot, and then you can take your picture or just see it. And my last tip, tip 15, is also wait, but it's a different type of wait. If you've just heard a bird, or whether it was singing or you heard movement in a bush or a tree, and then when you look, it's just silent and still, wait. So they got scared and they froze and they were quiet, but as soon as that scaredness wears off and they're like, oh, there's no threat, they're going to relax and they're going to make noise, they're going to move, and then you will find them and you can see them or take your picture. I hope these tips were helpful. These are just tips that I have developed over the years, and I just thought I would share them because so many people tell me that they have such a hard time spotting the birds. If you have any other tips, please leave them in the comments. And I would just love for any comments and questions down below. It really does help support the channel. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much. Have a great day and God bless you.